Media days for Phoenix Comicon and Comicon and Fan Fest. Appreciate you all coming out tonight, participating in interviews, as well as the coverage that you've given us over the last year, over the last several years for some of you. Wanted just to provide an opportunity just to kind of have an open Q&A. I've had some one-on-one interviews with a couple of you, but figured it would just be a good opportunity for you all to ask whatever might be on your mind.
Are you having fun tonight?
I am having fun tonight. And I think there's about to be a hand raised over here with a question.
Actually,
Yes?
why did you decide to have this kind of event?
Okay, and if you don't mind also just letting me know your names. And
Ben Raggington from Two Gate
Ben,
Geeks.
okay.
I'm Keith.
Keith, nice to meet you guys. Why did we decide to have this event? A couple of reasons. One, to foster better relationships with those who cover our show, media outlets, bloggers, as well as to just share information about how conventions like Phoenix Comicon run. There's a lot of information that we know that we want to be able to share, and we see comments on social media. We read, reports following the convention. We read, blog reports. And sometimes there'll be feedback about, well, why didn't this thing happen? Come on, Phoenix Comicon, get your act together. And we can look at that and be like, well, there's actually a really good reason why, but how can you always get that information out? So doing something like this, helps foster those relationships to be able to get some more of that information out. And additionally, we really like our offices. We wanted to share it and get as many people out as possible. So, more questions? Raise your hand or shout them out. Stand.
Oh man, I'm all out of questions, so.
You're all out of questions?
I'm all out of questions.
Oh.
Are we going to do this again?
Are we doing it again tomorrow?
Part 2.
I believe we will be doing this again, and I think we'll also be opening up the offices in other ways as well. Open house with volunteers, possibly with local creators. Again, it's just kind of a way for us to foster better dialogue, have a better relationship. I mean, most of us who have been doing Phoenix Comicon for years have been volunteers, and we've been working out of our homes. So this is a chance for us to collectively work on Phoenix Comicon in one space. And it's opening up a lot of possibilities for us. I'll come into the office and I'll see that there's different groups meeting. Whether it's there's a guest liaison team that's meeting, or street team is meeting over here. We've got operations, logistics that's organizing stuff in the warehouse. It's going to be just that little edge that makes what we do go just a little bit better.
One of the questions we asked in the several interviews that we did was, how do you see Phoenix Comicon and Fan Fest growing, and what do you want to see come out of this? And the second part of that question is, do you anticipate doing something like on a quarterly basis? You had indicated you love your offices, and so you have this office space. So are there options of doing smaller events more regularly?
Okay. So, multiple questions in there.
Sorry.
I'm like, where did we start on that? Where do we see Comicon and Fan Fest going and growing? Fan Fest, this being its second year, I think we're still kind of learning how it's going to grow. Comicon definitely grew very naturally and organically over the years, in a lot of ways based on just the people who came out to participate, both from an attendee perspective as well as a volunteer perspective. And that has an influence on the type of show it ends up being. In an interview with you earlier, you had kind of asked a similar question, and I used this example that I knew that what we were doing was kind of working as far as being able to provide a canvas to different volunteers and attendees to bring their passion to Phoenix Comicon. When I think it was 2007, when we had a couple of volunteers, it was Amy Black, who came to us and said, we really want to do a zombie beauty pageant. And I have no idea what this is. I'm like, a zombie beauty? I don't get this. Like, I'm not of that fandom, I'm not of that genre, but you have such passion on what you're wanting to do that we will provide you with space to do this thing. And it turned out to be this very fun, cool event where we had zombies participating in a beauty pageant, but as zombies, right? And we ended up doing it for a number of years because it became a signature event. So as far as Fan Fest goes, I think we're still in those initial stages of kind of figuring it out, figuring out what's possible at the stadium, you know, the before Christmas time frame. We learned last year that the attendees who came out participated, I think, in Fan Fest in a way slightly different than Comicon because it was right before Christmas. They were buying more Christmas presents than just spending money on themselves. For Comicon, you know, where do we see it going in the next few years? You know, I'm not sure if it can continue to grow at the pace it has, because just from a raw number, where do you get all of these people? You know, if we're already in that 75, 77,000, where do you get even more people? You know, locally, nationwide, internationally, you know, possibly. I think what we've been focusing our efforts on over the last couple of years is the event that we're putting on, how can we make it better for the attendees that are coming out, and not just bigger. We make mistakes. We make mistakes every year. We're pretty open when we make mistakes. We address the mistakes we make. I don't have a problem with our volunteers making mistakes. We're all human, and we make decisions based on the information we have at a given time. And sometimes that information later on changes, right? Sounds like a great decision right now, and later on, you know, you kind of look back in hindsight and say, yeah, maybe it didn't go quite as well as it should have. And I talk with volunteers and say, you know, of all the mistakes that I've ever made in Phoenix Comic-Con, the ones that have had the biggest impact on the most attendees and the most volunteers and the most guests and that have been the most expensive, those mistakes were made by me. And I'm still here because I've learned from them. And that's really the key is we're going to make mistakes, we're going to ideally learn from it and not make those mistakes again. And yes, you all know what I'm going to say, my staff knows, because why would you want to make the same mistake when you can make all new mistakes?
I think I said that in several interviews tonight.
Oh,
By the
good.
way. I said, as Matt says.
Oh, good. We're right on top of the messaging, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I know I'll read stuff on social media, you know, I'll read articles, you know, where it's kind of like, you know, are all of these Comic-Cons just trying to be the next New York Comic-Con and the next San Diego Comic-Con? And that's never really been a goal for us. I know that the comparisons have been made over the years, and a lot of it has always been the proximity. I mean, I remember back in like 2006, 2007, we would have, you know, volunteer meetings, and we would get people who would come out and be like, well, San Diego Comic-Con does it like this. And I'm like, okay, we have like 2,000 people? Like, we don't have the financial backing or even the size to do some of what San Diego does. Over the years, we've been able to do more and add more, but there are some things San Diego will always be able to do that nobody else is going to be able to, because they have those relationships with the movie studios. And they have some of those relationships with the publishers. And I look at what we're providing, and in many ways, it's for 4 days out of the year, it's Disneyland. If you were to say, would you rather Phoenix Comic-Con be more like a San Diego or possibly something else, I would say probably something else. Ideally, Phoenix Comic-Con can become its own unique thing. You know, much like when people talk about San Diego, it's its own unique thing. When people talk of a South by Southwest festival in Austin, Texas, it's its own unique thing. Can Phoenix Comic-Con become that when people talk about a Phoenix Comic-Con, it's very clearly its own unique thing, unlike what you might find in another city? Are there things that are similar? Sure. But is there enough things that are different, you know, to make it unique? When I think of some of the stuff that we're adding in this year from a programming standpoint, you know, that's where I think we start to differentiate ourselves. One of the programming tracks that we're expanding from really just a few panels to, you know, kind of a full-fledged programming track is a dedicated science track. You know, we've had science fiction, we've had fantasy, and we've done some science panels, you know, where science fiction gets it wrong, or NASA updates. And we, some of us have helped organize, you know, what I would describe as hard science conventions with the SETI Institute in California. And can we bring some of that into what we do at Phoenix Comic-Con? We know our attendees are highly interested in science. We know that from the attendance at the panels. We know it from surveys that we do. And is this something that we can add in that helps differentiate what Phoenix Comic-Con is? So yes, we're still doing comic books and anime and gaming and media, but can we add in this whole new component, and where could that go in 2, 3, 4 years? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a fun ride. That was the first part of your question, right?
And I'll just say that you actually answered that way better than I did. My answer was really bad.
The second part was, what about more events scattered throughout the year, mini events?
Well, there are a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Jillian said she was up for that. Where is she? She went to go start working on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of work to do. I think within sort of the Comicon realm, with Comicon and Fan Fest, that's probably it. There's an aspect of, you know, do you dilute what you're doing when you do more of it? And I don't think we ever want to get to a point where people say, you know what, I'm not going to go to Phoenix Comic-Con because I'll just go to the thing in 2 or 3 months. And they are a lot of work. Would we be able to do more events here? Again, I think small focused events, kind of like this nature.
Like film festivals or something like that.
That's what I was talking about, you know, small focused events that are a singular event or singular focus.
But all under the
I
Phoenix
said that
Comic-
sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
I think
under the Phoenix
that's
Comic
got
Con
some
banner.
interesting aspects to it.
Phoenix Comic-Con rents out a theater.
Can't we just
Agree.
Yeah, big giant
We
screen.
got a great TV in that conference room,
it's
right?
like a panel room?
Yeah, and there's glass walls, so some people can sit around on the outside as long as we pipe a speaker out there, Bluetooth, wireless.
Hey,
There for you.
Just think.
clearly we don't have anything planned. But how many people here that aren't volunteers or staff have attended one of our volunteer meetings? Anybody? Okay, so we'll occasionally do kind of just Q&A at the volunteer meetings, and what it usually means is I'm trying to stretch the time that I have, and volunteers will ask questions, and sometimes, you know, it's very basic, straightforward, and sometimes I'll ask a question, we all kind of look at ourselves like, that's a really good idea, why didn't we come up with that one? Us doing more events, especially maybe around the office space, I don't think we really thought about that. Would we do other events, you know, outside of the pop culture world? Stay tuned.
Just food for thought.
And was there more components to that
was,
question?
That was it.
Okay.
One,
Unless you want me to ask something else.
Well, you can, but
as I say,
I'm
if I
open
can,
for others.
if I can just throw something out that, you know, just like, that might be a fun, like, collaboration with different, you know, we could have you guys could maybe, you know, sponsor movie night, and, you know, in collaboration with, you know, and that could give an opportunity for, you know, different venues to be able to get some different material going in, some different tie-ins with Fan Fest or with the Comicon.
Yep. Other questions? Yes, sir.
My name's Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Is best case scenario keeping Fan Fest in December? Because I know I'm sure a lot of it has to revolve around the Cardinal schedule, but
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Being at the stadium, you know, we went to the stadium for a couple of reasons. It's very expensive to do a convention downtown Phoenix in peak season, and that's pretty much when the weather is nice. Non-peak season is effectively Memorial Day to Labor Day, right? Because it's really hot. So we're able to get better rates with the hotels. We're able to get access to more space at the convention center. And there's some discounts that we can get through the convention center being in a time when it's 100 degrees out. The stadium is also on a side of town that we really aren't at, and one of the things that we found was we had people attend FanFest that had never attended Comicon before. As far as the December timeframe, we're somewhat at the whims of the stadium. They don't know what the schedule is until April of a given year because that's when the NFL releases the schedule. They have certain clients that they always book. They got some gun shows and RV shows and stuff. We don't want to do anything too close to Phoenix Comic Con because we like a break after Phoenix Comic Con, and we kind of have a feeling our attendees would as well. So you kind of then look at the fall months and what else is going on, and look into September, October, and and sort of that November, December timeframe. When we look at this year, the dates that were really the most available was the weekend that we have FanFest on. The other one I want to say was like the second weekend in November. And we looked at it and we're like, well, that one actually might work. And then we realized that it was 1 week after Tucson Comic-Con. And we have a really good relationship with Michael Lavares, who owns and runs Tucson Comic-Con. We know a number of exhibitors that exhibit at that show that would probably be exhibiting at ours. And we also know attendees that go between both of them. So it was kind of a case of we don't really want to step on anybody's toes. I think we'll learn a lot this year from FanFest, just as we did last year. We had a good turnout with our show last year, especially given the fact that nobody was expecting it, that we put it together in 4 months, that we announced it very quickly. We signed the contract with the stadium for FanFest last year on a Wednesday, and we announced the event on Saturday. And then people were asking, well, who's going to be there? And we're like, we don't know. And they're like, well, what's taking place? I can't tell you that right now. So we'll see. We did a survey of attendees to say, what would be your preference for a date of FanFest? And very general, it was like early November, early December, end of January-ish. And the December timeframe ranked higher just by a little bit than the November. And January was last on it. I wouldn't want to do anything February, March, April, because we're working on Comic-Con. You say, do you look at October or September? There's other events that take place in town that I wouldn't necessarily want to be too close to either. Sabotin Con is a sister show of ours that I'd been involved with early on, their Labor Day weekend. Professional courtesy, I don't want to be doing something at the same time frame. So I kind of walked around that answer. Yeah.
That was good. That was good enough.
All right. What else? You have your chance to ask, your hard-hitting questions. Your expose. Oh yeah. Hi.
Hi, Wendy from Plug In Family. We just came back from Tucson Comic-Con.
Yes.
And they did something brand new there. They invited children from the hospital
Okay.
to come an hour before the conference opened, so that before the convention opened, so they could meet the costume characters and have pictures with them.
Really?
Is that something that you have ever heard of before, or maybe considering possibly for FanFest or Comic-Con?
I hadn't heard of that before, but
I was one of
that's-
the costume characters, and so
Okay.
it was amazing to meet the kids. I think they had 20 to 30 families. I'm not sure which the number was. I heard 20, and the news reported 30.
okay.
So, yeah, it was an amazing opportunity.
I will put that in the.
Okay.
That's a really good idea. I haven't heard that.
But they brought the families in, they gave them gift bags, and then they could meet all the characters
Okay.
from all of the costume groups.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that would, if you can do something like that, I think that would be great to do.
I agree.
And you're a partner with Phoenix Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any number of
Enough of the costuming groups that already seem.
Talking.
The costuming groups already, are down for charity work like that too, so.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a children's hospital on the west side, maybe.
For FanFest?
Yeah.
I don't know. But we
Because I
can
know a
look
lot
into
of the
that.
groups go into the hospital,
Mhm,
but it's
they do.
easier
There's only
when they
Phoenix
come and
Children's.
they were able to see
Okay.
the conference and be able to do all that.
Okay.
especially all of them at one time.
Yeah,
The other hospitals may have
A
a
wing.
wing
yeah,
that I know, we're both in the medical field, so.
okay.
Phoenix Children's the only one that I know.
Which gardens,
That's amazing.
Gardens in Mesa.
yeah, which, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Kate.
Kate,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Good. So if we want to do an interview
Mhm.
with one of the guests, what's the best way to go about doing that?
So the best way is talking to Stephanie or Jillian?
I am
You,
Tom.
Tom?
Tom
Probably
raised
have
his
my
hand.
email.
He gets that one.
Okay.
Email me.
Get with Tom and get with me and
Yeah.
we'll work.
Cool.
Tom, what's
We're
the best
we're
way?
fixing that this year.
Yeah.
That's a goal for this year, so email me and we'll,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. That was an easy one. And we call that delegation. Do you see what I just did there? Just bouncing around.
Jillian's not here, so you can't hold the full, rolling down the hill.
I see some people out. Yeah, I see you. Yeah, you got any questions? Yeah. No. Good. What else do you want to know?
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
I want to control the weather, because then I can fly and I can make it sunny and rain, and I could then control the temperatures when Phoenix Comicon rolls around. It's a very pleasant
Or when
85
Fan Fest
degrees.
rolls around, it doesn't rain?
It doesn't rain.
That would be great.
Gonna make the weather quick get wrong.
What do you mean the roof is waterproof?
Yeah, what do you mean the roof isn't watertight?
So during the summer, everybody complains, "Oh my God, it's so hot at Phoenix Comic Con," and then we came into Fan Fest, and everybody's like, "It's so cold. I can't win.
It's 65 degrees.
I cannot win."
It's not cold.
They have no way to heat that bowl.
That's not true. When we had like some exhibitors complain that it was too cold, we said, "We'll take care of it," and then we're like, "How does it feel?" We asked them to turn up the heat, and they're like, "Oh, it feels so much better."
Oh, I thought you just bought them scarves and mittens.
Well, I did that too. Did that too.
Question from Fan Fest last year,
Yeah.
and I don't know who would cover this, but I noticed the 2 food trucks that showed up were rather busy.
Oh, I'm sorry. 5 this year.
Oh, fine.
High five.
Thank you.
They're all ice cream.
There's a snow cone one.
5 different ice cream trucks, 5
Prices at
different
the,
flavors.
Arena are rather,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what they had was good, the 2 places.
And for the record, we have no control over parking prices, food prices,
Autograph prices.
autograph prices.
Photo op prices.
Yeah.
The price for parking at Fan Fest was good.
Yeah, we should do that
I tell
again.
you.
I think that's not happening this year, or?
It's still free
Oh,
for
it's
Fan
still-
Fest, for sure. That is one of the selling points.
Okay.
Obviously, for Comic-Con, we've seen prices go up for parking. And
Go up. What happened
also-
last year was
we
was
also-
shocking.
Yeah, we also can't control the baseball schedule or
Right.
any of the other
Yeah.
events that may share our weekends.
yeah.
Phoenix Symphony.
And
Phoenix Symphony.
It was a bridal.
Boy, do those symphony attendees love when the zombie walk comes by, right when they're getting out in their tuxedos and fancy
Some of
dress.
my favorite pictures I actually took 2 years ago at the zombie walk. There was these 2 old couples, and the 2 ladies were just fascinated. And they were out in the street, and they were like talking to the people, and their husbands were up on the sidewalk, just like, "What the hell's going on?" And I've got these pictures of these 2 old ladies.
They're
like,
having a conversation. What do you ask? How did you die?
they were like, "How did you make this? What's this?" And it was just so fantastic because they were so. I mean, at first they were like, "Why is everybody lined up? What's going on?"
Why is everyone dead?
They really got into it. It was.
Everybody
so, it was
died
so
during
fun.
the concert.
It was the programming of the concert. Whoops.
you look so much better than our neighbors down the street. Yeah, I think, the parking garages have wised up to the fact that there's thousands of people that go downtown for parking, and parking that used to be $10, $12 a couple years ago You know, it was 20, 30, 40, I think I heard a report, you know, 50 or 60 at a couple of them.
Jeez.
Across the street, it was like $75.
Yeah.
Really?
So the bank, it was
We
like, I drove by
have
that again.
arrived.
I saw one where the pricing went higher as it went up later in the day, than West Park was.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it dropped down to $10 again.
Light rail is a
Yep.
good thing during Comicon, you know, to get to the convention. A couple of years ago, I'm trying to think, this was 2013, and we had the major lines off of 3rd Street into the Metro Marche area, and the police were on site and trying to help direct traffic, and my phone rings and it's my sister, and I just learned, you know, if it's my parents or sister, like, I just answer, because they rarely called me. And so she called me, and I'm like, hey, like, you know, it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, you know, hey, what, you know, hey, this man, what, you know, what's up? And she's like, well, I'm trying to find parking. And I'm like, well, you know, good luck with that. Comic-Con. And she's like, well, I found parking, but like, I have to walk like, you know, 5 blocks, and I had to pay. And I'm like, yeah, like, Phoenix Comic-Con. And she's like, well, I thought maybe you knew of like someplace closer. And I'm like, it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday. There's a ball game, Phoenix Comicon, and I think there's something else going on that year. And I'm like, congratulations, you found a spot within 5 blocks. Like, so, after 2010, we do an attendee survey every year, and we ask a bunch of different questions. You know, how did you hear about Phoenix Comicon, or rate our operations or our programming or our guests. And the last question we ask, we've been doing a survey since 2007, 2008, the last question we ask is, I want Phoenix Comic-Con to know. And it's an open question. And so it's the last one just because we figure people are now thinking about Phoenix Comic-Con, and we'll get everything. Like, people will be like, oh my god, this is such a great event, you know, thank you so much for doing it, to you absolutely suck, you know, you should be ashamed of yourselves for the event that you put on. And after 2010, you know, reading the comments, people were like, I can't believe that you would schedule Phoenix Comic-Con during like NBA final games. And it's like, well, we didn't know the Suns were going to make the playoffs. And this was also when the legislature passed Senate Bill 1070 that the governor had signed, and so there were protest rallies around it. And so people were like, I can't believe you scheduled Phoenix Comic-Con during protest rallies. And it's like, we don't have any like control like of what's going on.
I can't believe you scheduled Phoenix Fan Fest when it's raining.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I can control the weather. That's my superpower. So.
All the blame comes down onto you now.
No. So. Yes, Wendy.
Question again.
Yes.
How many volunteers and staff do you have?
2,000.
And if, okay.
Can you name them all?
And if somebody wants to volunteer, do they just go to the website and click on volunteer tab or something?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It sounds deceptively easy, doesn't it?
Okay, just check.
Yeah, so we have, was it just shy of 2,000 volunteers for Phoenix Comic-Con, or was it
Actually, just over.
Okay, just over 2,000 volunteers.
Yes.
Fan Fest, I want to say, is about 400.
Yes.
Okay, 370, or is it?
370, 470, somewhere in there.
It's about 400.
221, whatever works.
Yeah. The best way is to go to the website. We have a volunteer tab, and we're pretty good with keeping open positions up there of what we're looking for. We will also typically post when we have our all-hand volunteer meetings. Comic-Con will start in January, and it's a good chance just to kind of come out. People get to hear me talk, then they flee. He thought it was funny.
I'm just saying, I'm still here.
Yeah, he can stay.
He laughs at my jokes too, I like this one.
Yeah.
He's been bribed.
So that's really the best way, and usually there's contact information for the specific person to contact to volunteer. What's really interesting is when we do the all-hand meetings, usually just do a show of hands, like how many people have volunteered for Phoenix Comic-Con before, and there's a good number that raise their hand. How many people, you know, are new volunteers that haven't volunteered before, and we always have new people. And what gets really crazy to me is I'll then say, well, of those people who are new, how many have not attended Phoenix Comic-Con before? And there's always a good number of people who have never attended the convention before, but they're there to volunteer. So,
we take them and don't let them go.
So,
I still have the scar from where I signed my first volunteer contract. And,
Good.
yeah.
so from you all, I know some of you have covered Phoenix Comic-Con before. You know, for a couple of years, some of you probably within the last year or so. How can we service you better in your needs?
Oh,
This was an open Q&A, right? Like, I could ask questions of anybody else.
Should we send a survey? Free stuff.
Free stuff.
oh yes!
Swag.
I knew it was gonna be
Swag.
free. Swag.
I'm with the photo team, and probably one thing, I like to stay downtown at a hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be nice, you know, people who are volunteering maybe to get discounts
Mm-hmm.
on hotels.
Really would be nice. Yeah,
It's not the weather. It's no control.
yeah. I mean, we negotiate with all the hotels. We do get a small number of rooms at a discount over what the group rate is, you know, so whatever the, you know, Hyatt is $120, right? So we'll get a slight discount on that. The problem is with over 2,000 volunteers, who do we make those available to? And we're also booking rooms for all of our invited guests, which is about 200 this last year. You know?
2 to 3.
Yeah. And there's obviously some key staff that do get hotel rooms based on the benefit package, which is, you know, publicly available. So that has been a request that has been made for years. It would be great for volunteers to get discounts at the hotels. There really just isn't that big of discounts available, and I don't know how to make it available that would be equitable and fair to everybody. There's not necessarily 2,000 hotel rooms that we can get at a discount. You know, what we have done is obviously, you know, director managers, we provide a complimentary hotel room for them. Coordinators, there's a stipend to kind of help out a little bit. It would be nice to get to a point where we can, you know, expand that for more.
In my opinion, the rates are incredibly cheap for a hotel in that venue. So, but
It's
that's
all
just
relative.
It's relative. Yeah.
It's all relative.
Just bunk up, everyone.
And we do
Sleeping
have many
bags.
volunteers that do that. But we're very mindful of the fact that we have volunteers that, you know, they earn a modest living. They're volunteering, and you take $120, $130 hotel room, you add on the 12+% tax, and you stay for 4 days, and now you're looking at $500, $600 on top of, you know, food and parking.
Yeah, they added parking.
Yeah. And it can get expensive. You know, when we look at our volunteer benefit package, and I'll stack our benefit package against any convention in the country, you know, we've always tried to use it to try and remove barriers for people to volunteer. You know, to make it a little bit easier for them, as well as to recognize their contributions. Complimentary passes for them, maybe their family, you know, some meal vouchers, you know, maybe some parking depending on their position, you know, stipend, discounts with exhibitors, and so on. So I would love to. It's a somber group.
Well, he's got a great big smile.
No, you don't want my question.
Yes, it's Robert, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit off topic, but has there ever been any kind of concern with like large out-of-state cons trying to penetrate the Phoenix market or anything like that?
No, not at all.
Why would somebody want to try to
I
come
don't
and
know.
host a pop culture convention in Phoenix?
This industry is definitely changing over the last few years. There was a time when not that many people knew what a Comicon was, or even that Phoenix had one. And especially in our early years, we definitely heard from people, I didn't even know Phoenix had a Comicon.
My battery's almost dead. I'm gonna go
How you doing?
get a new one. Bye.
So, with the proliferation and sort of explosion of attendance at these conventions, there are even more pop culture conventions. You know, at this point, pretty much every major city has a Comic-Con. Secondary cities have a Comic-Con, and there's a lot of cities that have multiple Comic-Cons that take place. Is it a concern? Sure. I mean, we pay attention to what's going on. You know, there's 3 main companies that are looking at expanding through growth or acquisition. Reed Pop, which does New York Comic Con, bought Emerald City Comic Con last year. You've got Informa, which is a trade show company that bought Fan Expo in Toronto, which also then got them, you know, the Toronto one, the Vancouver one. They then bought one in Dallas and Orlando, and they're expanding. And on any given weekend, you can find a Comic-Con or a pop culture convention taking place someplace in the country. People think it's really easy to do. And then you get news reports of overcrowding and, you know, and issues. Do I think there will be a company that comes in out of state into Phoenix? It can happen. There are some barriers to entry. In order to rent space at the convention center more than 14 months out, you also got to be booking hotel rooms. And a lot of these conventions, such as a Wizard World, don't want to take on that risk or responsibility. You've also got the fact that when we're you know, at the Phoenix Convention Center, there's a non-compete, you know, 30 days prior, 30 days post. So it starts to eliminate some of the available dates. Add in an amazing Arizona Comic-Con, which we're not affiliated with, and you would then have another 30-day pre and post. So there's an aspect of saying, what facilities could you do an event of this nature at? And there's really only a couple facilities in town: Phoenix Convention Center, and probably the University of Phoenix Stadium. So we're, you know, we keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on. I talk shop with my counterparts in Denver and Salt Lake City, Kansas City, formerly Seattle, but I still stay in touch with the gentleman who used to own it. And we just kind of pay attention to what's going on. There's other impacts, though, with that expansion. With there being multiple conventions on the same weekend, we're competing with conventions for the same guests. And we're competing for some of the attendees that would be willing to travel. And prices go up. Actor prices go up. Their autograph prices go up. And, you know, we try to maintain an affordable price. There's a balancing act. Attendees want more guests. Those guests are more expensive. So, don't you love I just kind of keep talking on here? Does anybody have a time commitment? Anybody wanting to leave, need to leave? If anybody does, feel free just to leave. Like, you don't need to wait for a formal ending. So, go if you need to. You had your hand raised?
Aaron, also a volunteer.
Okay.
With some of the unfortunate events, like at the Florida Zombie Crawl and Denver, been forced to reevaluate. One of my favorite things is the cosplay. I love seeing the craft, the humor, the creative mashups and things like that. And I started seeing that and I'm like, oh, this is, you know, unfortunate and tragic, and it's also going to impact things. I could see it proliferating.
What's the issue from the Florida zombie?
There was a shooting.
Okay.
That was, and apparently, you know, because of the cosplay, people having guns that are peace-bound.
Yeah.
I know they go through that, but it makes it start to like, do we have to start thinking about liability, protecting our fans, making sure they're not put at risk, all those things that come with being in charge of a big event like this.
We think about it every day.
Yeah.
And the city of Phoenix thinks about it every day. They've got essentially a working committee that meets once a month that's comprised of traffic and police and the convention center and the mayor's office, just talking about Phoenix Comic-Con. And they're meetings that we're not even a part of because it really is just, you know, logistics and infrastructure. We have a liaison with the City of Phoenix Police Department that as we maybe hear anything we can send over. You know, a couple of years ago, after the Boston Marathon bombing, we instituted a bag check process. Sort of okay, sort of worked, sort of didn't. a convention like this is a soft target. So if you are somebody who wants to do damage and you want to get publicity, this is the type of event you would do it at. They're no different than possibly like, you know, the Boston Marathon too was a soft target. So is it something that we think about? Yeah. Is it something that we put some processes in place? Sure. I don't have an answer to say we have the means to keep everybody safe, because we don't.
No, I was just wondering, I'm not asking for anything specific, it was just, and do you see it impacting or changing the character of the con itself because of restrictions that you might be forced to put in place?
We haven't seen anything yet. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet saying you can't have people in masks or you know, face painting. You know, the City of Phoenix Police Department handles our peace bonding process, and so we work closely with them as far as what is allowed and what isn't. We have, you know, increased our security personnel on site, both from the paid security as well as off-duty police officers. And the last few years, we have had undercover police officers who have come in as part of training exercises. So leading up to the Super Bowl, we were approached by the city of Glendale to say, we want to have, you know, 40 undercover officers essentially training at your event in counterterrorism and, you know, and support. You know, will you allow this to happen? You know, because this is a great way for them to get some training. And we're like, you want to put 40 undercover police officers at our site, like, free of charge to us? Yes. So,
I think that's a missed opportunity, there's some costs to be recouped there.
I'm happy to have them, right? Anytime they want to come out, yeah, you bet. So, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, my parents worry about it because they just are afraid, you know, there's going to be some crazy person who puts a bomb in a backpack. And I think that's somewhat true of a lot of things that we do, you know, within society. You know, there's a question of saying after the Aurora, Colorado shooting, which took place before Dark Knight, you know, Batman movie, you know, did that change your movie-going habits? I still go to the movie theater. I know that they've changed the announcements they do, you know, if you see anything suspicious, but hasn't necessarily changed, you know, that experience. I'm sure there's some people who have stopped going. Anybody got an uplifting question?
Well, I thought, yeah.
I'll show you later.
Any more jokes?
You heard about the guy that walked into the library and asked the librarian if they had any books on Pavlov's dog and Schrodinger's cat. The librarian said, you know, that rings a bell, but I'm not sure if we have it or not.
Quantum humor. Yes. It comes in
You just
tiny
had-
packets.
You just had a rim shot all
Yes.
set up.
I was looking.
Shameless, isn't it?
I was looking for this one earlier.
Okay.
That would've been great for the
We
last
totally need this for the all hands meetings. We'll
Yes.
set it up to a cue like when I'm saying things.
Totally doable.
Yep.
Make it happen.
We're taking these all hand meetings to like the next level this
You
year.
know,
Oh
I
yeah.
teach a class and it's for 3 days and I've done it for years.
Okay.
So I carry this around with me. I have my own sound effects.
It took you years to conduct a 3-day class?
Yeah.
He's dedicated, but he's not efficient.
All right. So how are we doing on time? Plenty of time. So I don't know. Maybe one more question.
Any more jokes?
Any more jokes?
What are you looking at me for?
What has 4 legs and goes boo? Kind of with a cold. Boo, boo, boo.
Nice. All right. Well, I think on that note,
I just closed the app, I wouldn't even.
So we're closing with boo then.
Yeah.
well, I don't.
Boo's at the end.
So, anyways, thank you all for coming out. I know some of us will still just kind of be hanging out, but I think that concludes the open Q&A. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.